Once upon a time in the bustling city of Lagser, there was a very wealthy and famous family, the Thompson family. The father, L.C.E. Thompson, and the mother, Lila Thompson, were very busy business people. They had a lot of work and often travelled around the world for their business. They lived in a large and beautiful house. Despite the house being magnificent, there was something sad about it. Their only daughter, Anna, was often alone. Anna was 15 years old and very intelligent and independent, but her parents were rarely at home. Anna was looked after by Maria, the kind housekeeper. Maria was very caring, but she couldn't replace the love of Anna's parents. From a young age, Anna had learned to take care of herself. She loved to imagine adventures where she was the brave heroine. As she grew older, Anna increasingly felt the absence of her parents. Adolescence brought new challenges, and Anna often felt lost and misunderstood. To show that she was not happy, she began to rebel. She would sneak out at night and go to places where she shouldn't be. She often came back very late, sometimes even at dawn. One evening, as she was walking through the streets of Lagser, Anna met a group of young people who felt the same way she did. With them, she found friends who understood her frustrations. But her new friends led her into dangerous activities. They smoked and drank alcohol, which was not good for them. "Try this, it won't hurt you," said a friend, handing her a bottle. For the first time at the age of 15, Anna drank alcohol, and it soon became a habit. In the days that followed, she attended many parties and put herself in risky situations. Her grades in school dropped, and her behaviour became increasingly difficult to manage. Maria, very worried, tried to talk to Anna, but she didn't want to listen. And so Anna, the once wise and intelligent girl, found herself lost in a whirlwind of rebellion and bad decisions. Despite their busy schedules, Luke and Lila often found a way to spend some time in Lagser before leaving again for their travels around the world. Upon returning from a trip, they quickly noticed their daughter's different attitude. Anna was more distant. Her eyes reflected an unusual fatigue, and she seemed constantly on edge. One day, an argument broke out between Anna and her mother, Lila. Lila had discovered an empty bottle of alcohol in her daughter's room. Confronted with this discovery, Anna became very insolent and insulting towards her mother. "How dare you go through my things? You're never here. You don't understand anything about my life," Anna shouted, her eyes blazing with anger. Lila, shocked by the intensity of her words. Her daughter's words stunned Lila, but she tried to stay calm. "Anna, I'm worried about you. It's not normal to find this kind of thing in your room. What's going on?" "Nothing you can understand. All you care about is your work. You never have time for me," Anna shouted. Lila and Luke were devastated. They realized the depth of their daughter's distress. Despite their efforts to stay in Lagser and spend more time with her, Anna continued to sneak out at night, mingling with questionable people and engaging in increasingly self-destructive behavior. The situation seemed hopeless. The tension in the house was palpable, and every attempt at dialogue ended in an argument. Maria, the housekeeper, tried to support Anna as much as she could, but even she was overwhelmed by the gravity of the problem. One day, Lila's mother invited an old friend to the house. This friend, Madame Harder, came with her son, Hakim. As soon as they arrived, Madame Harder noticed Anna's strange behaviour. The young girl was distant, avoiding her parents' gaze, and always seemed defensive. Concerned, Madame Harder brought up the subject with Lila. "Lila, I've noticed your daughter seems very troubled. Do you remember my son, Hakim? He went through a difficult time too." Lila nodded, vaguely recalling the problems Hakim had in the past. Madame Harder continued, "We found a solution that really helped. We sent him to a well-known boarding school that's famous for turning around even the most rebellious children. Look at Hakim now. He's as gentle as a lamb." Lila listened attentively. "What's the name of this boarding school?" she asked. Madame Harder replied, "It's called Sainte Mathilde Institute. They have excellent educators and compassionate discipline. The headmistress, Sister Madeleine, is highly respected and knows how to handle troubled youth. Lila considered this suggestion, thinking that maybe St. Matilde Institute could offer Anna the structure and support she desperately needed. She observed Hakim, now a polite and respectful young man, completely transformed from the rebellious teenager she once knew. This change gave Lila hope. She decided to discuss it with Luke and meet with the administrators of the boarding school. After talking with Luke, they made the difficult but necessary decision to enroll Anna in the school. Anna, of course, was fiercely opposed to the idea. "You want to send me away again? You're showing that you don't want me," she screamed, her voice trembling with anger, and despite Anna's fierce opposition, the decision was made quickly. Luke and Lila, although often absent, wanted the best for their daughter. They were terrified by the path she seemed to be on and knew that a drastic intervention was necessary. "No, I won't go. You can't force me," protested Anna, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're just abandoning me again." "Anna, this is not abandonment," replied Lila, her voice soft but firm. "We are doing this because we love you and want you to be safe and happy. The boarding school can help you find your way again." Luke added, "We spoke to Madame Hadda and Hakim. They went through similar tough times and found help there. We believe it can help you too." Despite her protests and tears, Anna was sent to the boarding school. On the day of her departure, the atmosphere was heavy and emotional. Maria, the housekeeper, hugged Anna tightly, promising her that everything would be fine. Upon her arrival, Anna discovered that the boarding school was a sinister and mysterious place, perched in the heart of a forest. The building seemed almost fused with its surroundings, its stone walls blending with the gnarled trunks and intertwined branches of ancient trees. The air was heavy with an oppressive energy, as if the walls themselves whispered dark stories and long-forgotten secrets. Inside, the rooms were large but cold, with high ceilings and narrow windows that let in very little light. The dormitories were lined with wrought-iron beds, each equipped with immaculate white sheets, but no personal decoration. The beds were so perfectly aligned and uniform that they resembled an army of soldiers at rest. The dormitories, separated by gender, were supervised by nuns who enforced silence and discipline. The children had little time to themselves, and the daily routine was strict. Rising at dawn, morning prayers, intensive lessons, frugal meals, and, finally, bedtime under constant supervision. Sister Madeleine, the head of the boarding school, was a woman in her 60s, tall and slightly corpulent, with a face marked by years of rigour and discipline. Her grey hair was always pulled back into a tight bun, and her piercing blue eyes seemed to read the children's thoughts. She always wore a black rosary around her waist, her fingers sometimes nervously playing with the beads when something displeased her. Sister Madeleine moved through the hallways of the boarding school like a silent shadow, her footsteps echoing ominously on the stone floors. Sister Madeleine's presence imposed an undeniable authority, and the students froze in fear when she suddenly appeared. She was known for her strict discipline and severe punishments. A mere glance from her was enough to silence even the most unruly children. The day of Anna's arrival at the boarding school was like a macabre parade where parents came one by one to leave their children behind. Some of the children exhibited rebellious attitudes, struggling against the idea of being left in such an austere place. Others were terrified, desperately clinging to their parents' clothes, their eyes filled with tears and fear. The parents themselves were a mix of relief and guilt, relieved to finally find a place where their children could be taken care of and straightened out, but guilty for having to abandon them in such a rigid environment. The nuns, on the other hand, stood in a line, welcoming each family with distant politeness, guiding the new arrivals to their respective dormitories. As Anna's parents exchanged a few quick words with Sister Madeleine, Anna felt a surge of anger and helplessness. They were leaving her in this cold, foreign place, under the watch of a woman who showed no love or compassion in her eyes. Once the introductions were over, Sister Madeleine led Anna to her dormitory, explaining the strict rules in place. Anna quickly realized that any form of rebellion here would be immediately suppressed. Sister Madeleine stopped in front of a bare bed, nodding towards it with her chin. "Here is your bed. Evening prayers start in an hour. Be ready," she said in an icy voice before turning on her heels and disappearing into the hallways. Anna sat on the edge of her bed, her heart heavy. She looked around. The other children carefully avoided her gaze. She knew her stay here wouldn't be easy. Anna's first night at the boarding school was long and difficult. After the evening prayer, the lights were turned off, plunging the dormitory into complete darkness. The silence was only broken by the muffled sighs and whispers of the other children. Anna tossed and turned in her bed, the discomfort of the hard mattress amplifying her unease. Every creak of a bed, every loud breath of her fellow students reminded her how far she was from home. As she struggled to find sleep, her mind was flooded with memories of her life in Lagsa and the faces of her parents. The boarding school, with its cold walls and endless hallways, felt like a prison, far removed from the warmth and comfort of her previous life. The dark atmosphere was like a world apart. Time passed slowly, and Anna began to wonder if she would ever get used to this place. The next morning, Anna was abruptly torn from her sleep by piercing screams. She shot up, her heart pounding. The screams came from the far end of the dormitory. She turned and saw a scene that froze her with fear. Tali, the youngest girl in the boarding school, maybe 10 years old, was kneeling at the foot of her bed, her hands gripping the sheets, crying and pleading. Sister Madeleine stood behind her, her face expressionless, holding a leather whip in her hands. The other children watched the scene with wide eyes, some hiding their faces, others looking away. "You dare break the rules even after the warnings," said Sister Madeleine in a cold, authoritarian voice. "It's time you learned the consequences of disobedience." Anna wanted to scream, to stop what was happening, but she found herself paralyzed with fear. Tali's screams echoed through the dormitory with each lash of the whip, marking a new wave of pain and despair. The little girl's sobs intensified, and Anna felt tears streaming down her own cheeks, unable to bear the cruelty of the scene. Sister Madeleine, relentless, continued until Tali could no longer scream, her sobs turning into muffled whimpers. Finally, she turned to the other children, her icy gaze sweeping across the dormitory. "Let this be a lesson to all," she said in an impassive voice. "There are rules here, and they must be obeyed. Any form of disobedience will be punished accordingly." Without another word, she turned on her heels and left the dormitory, leaving behind a heavy and oppressive silence. The children remained frozen, the shock of what they had just witnessed preventing them from moving or speaking. The morning continued in a somber and gloomy atmosphere. The children rose in silence, casting anxious glances around them. The beds were made with military precision, each child fearfully inspecting their bed for the slightest imperfection. Breakfast was eaten in the austere refectory, under the strict supervision of the nuns. Anna, still in shock, ate mechanically, her thoughts revolving around the young girl who had been whipped. Sister Madeleine walked between the tables, her piercing gaze inspecting each student. Anna made an internal promise never to give Sister Madeleine a reason to punish her in the same way. The morning continued in a tense and oppressive mood. Heavy and gloomy, the children walked in single file toward their classroom. The grey walls and narrow windows let in only a faint light, reinforcing the sinister atmosphere of the boarding school. Anna felt oppressed by the tense silence and the averted glances of her classmates. The lessons were given by nuns just as strict as Sister Madeleine. Anna, sitting at her desk, tried to concentrate, but her thoughts kept returning to the morning's scene. The memory of the whip's blows and the little girl's cries haunted her, filling her with a sense of helplessness and revolt. During the midday break, Anna found herself alone in the courtyard, watching the other children play in silence or talk in hushed tones. Her gaze was fixed on Tali, the little girl who had been whipped that morning. All the students seemed to avoid her, terrified at the idea of approaching her to offer any comfort. Anna, moved by empathy for the young girl, rushed to comfort her, but before she could take a step, she heard a voice behind her say, "You shouldn't. I advise you not to." It was Phil, a rebellious boy she had noticed earlier. He seemed different, with a glimmer of defiance in his eyes. Phil approached her and, after ensuring no one was listening, murmured, "Here, it's forbidden to show empathy. If you show pity for her, you'll end up like the children who stayed in the room downstairs." Anna raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What room downstairs?" Phil glanced around again before replying. "There are rumours, stories about children who went to the room downstairs. No one really knows what happens there. Many kids went in and never came back. No one knows what happened to them. Those who were lucky enough to return were never the same again. Just look around you." Anna looked around and saw the frightened faces of the children. They seemed like automatons, mechanically obeying every command. "But that's not all," he continued. "At night, strange noises come from the room downstairs. Some say the nuns perform dark rituals." Anna felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The idea that the nuns, with their severe faces and impassive expressions, could be involved in something so sinister terrified her. Yet she couldn't ignore Tali, sitting alone and trembling in a corner of the courtyard. "I can't leave her like this," Anna said, determined. "She needs us." Over the months, Tali and Anna developed a close friendship. Tali finally seemed to regain her smile, thanks to Anna's comforting presence. The two girls spent more and more time together, supporting each other. Mutually supporting each other in this hostile boarding school surrounded by stern nuns, Anna gradually discovered Tali's story. At the age of 5, Tali had been placed in the boarding school by her aunt after the tragic death of her parents in a car accident. The little girl had been shattered by this loss, and the strict and cold environment of the boarding school had only worsened her sadness. But with Anna by her side, Tali began to heal. They shared confidences under the covers, talking about their fears and dreams. Anna found in Tali a sister she had never had, while Tali saw in Anna a light in the darkness of her daily life. Days passed at the boarding school, and Anna and Tali conformed to the strict rules of the establishment, always remembering Phil's warnings about the room downstairs. Their daily lives were punctuated by prayers, classes, and playtime, all under the constant watch of the nuns. Despite this, their friendship grew stronger day by day, becoming a precious refuge in this oppressive environment. Phil, meanwhile, continued to observe them from a distance, always cautious and vigilant. He had his own ways of avoiding suspicion and gathering information. Sometimes he would share his findings with Anna and Tali, offering them advice on how to navigate the maze of prohibitions and secrets of the orphanage. Then one day, everything changed abruptly. Tali disappeared. That morning, Anna woke up to find Tali's bed empty. Worried, she scanned the dormitory, hoping to see her somewhere, but there was no trace of her. Her heart pounded as she rushed to Phil to tell him the news. The other dormitory children looked at her, but no one wanted to answer her. They were too scared. The pale faces and averted gazes revealed the terror that gripped the children. Phil, however, didn't seem surprised. He narrowed his eyes and placed a reassuring hand on Anna's shoulder. "Calm down, Anna. It could be that she had a family emergency or that she received permission from the head nun. Let's wait a few days to see if she comes back." Although worry still gnawed at her, Anna clung to the hope that Phil was right and that Tali would soon return. Days passed, and with them, Anna's hope diminished. Every morning she woke up, anxiously glancing at Tali's empty bed, hoping to find her friend there. But the bed